Church, how are you doing today? Great to have this opportunity to share a devotion with you. At Alpha, which is where I work at the moment, we've been looking at the Psalms of Ascents, which are from Psalm 120 to 134, and they're quite positive, rejoicing psalms, considered that they were written by pilgrims as they made their way to Jerusalem to worship God. And so today I wanted to look at Psalm 122, and it says this is from the Passion Translation. It says, "I was overjoyed when they said, 'Let's go up to the house of the Lord.' And now at last we stand here inside the very gates of Jerusalem. O Jerusalem, you were built as a city of praise, where God and man mingle together. This is where all the tribes of Yahweh are required to come and worship him. This is where the thrones of kings have been established to rule in righteousness. Even King David ruled from here. Pray and seek for Jerusalem's peace, for all who love her will prosper. O Jerusalem, may there be peace for those who dwell inside your walls, and prosperity in your every palace. I intercede for the sake of my family and friends who dwell there, that they may all live in peace. For the sake of your house, Yahweh, I will seek the welfare and prosperity of Jerusalem." Now, as I share this passage today, this chapter, there's really just one verse that captures my attention that I want to make the focus, and that's verse 1. It's a really famous verse where David writes, he was overjoyed when they said, "Let's go up to the house of the Lord." The New King James Version, which is the version of many of our hearts, says, "I was glad when they said unto me, 'Let us go to the house of the Lord.'" Some of you might remember songs about that verse. But this particular psalm was penned by David, King David. And so that bears some interesting thoughts for me. The first is that this is a psalm of pilgrims going to Jerusalem, but David was not one of those. He never made the pilgrimage to Jerusalem because he had set himself in residence in Jerusalem. So certainly he may have experienced going back to Jerusalem after conflict or after travel, but never as a pilgrim because he had already lived there. There's a second difference as well, is that there was a difference between the physical Jerusalem that he saw and lived in and the one that was in his heart. For example, we know that in his heart was to build a temple for the Lord, and he had a great vision and dreams and thoughts of what that temple would look like as a great monument to the splendor and the glory of the Lord. So perhaps what was in his heart when he thought about Jerusalem was different to what everyone else saw. And as we read this psalm, while he could have written this for himself, I think, and many commentators think that he actually wrote this for others. He wrote this for those who are coming to Jerusalem, but perhaps not even in his day. He wrote this for those who would come to Jerusalem in the future, who would come to visit the temple that Solomon would build, who would come on pilgrimage and worship the Lord. And the fact that he speaks of himself in the third person and in the past tense in verse 5 perhaps gives evidence to this. And David had a longing for people to see what he saw, to be able to see the realization of what was in his heart, the temple and the place of worshiping the Lord. And I really think that is what is really in his heart as he expresses this psalm. Now, what does this mean for us? It's an interesting time for us, isn't it? As much as we're enjoying online church and we can experience God's presence anywhere, I'm sure that all of you, like I, are yearning for the time and the opportunity where we'll get to be with God's people in his house again. And there's going to be great joy on the day when our Prime Minister, Mr. Morrison, tells us that we can all go back to church. But if we carry the heart of David in this psalm, in this instance, David's heart was for those who had not yet experienced what was in his heart, had not yet experienced the joy of Jerusalem, of worshipping God in the temple that was to be built. And so for today, as much as we might carry that joy and expectation for ourselves, I think that to carry the heart of David says that we need to carry that joy and that expectation for others. that we shouldn't just be thinking about, looking forward to the day when we can return to church, but thinking about those who have never experienced it, never experienced God's house, never experienced his family, never experienced his presence in that sense. And like David did, to have that heart to say, I hope that there would be a day where you will say, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord, because of all of these things that are laid out for us. You know, it's an interesting time for us, and such a great opportunity to share God in a period of time where people have realised that the mechanics of our society can't be relied on the way that they would expect to. And so I wonder, as we do that and as we communicate and take advantage of this opportunity, would we allow God to create in our hearts that same excitement, passion, enthusiasm, anticipation that we have for returning to church and sharing time with each other for those other people that we know in our lives, and maybe those that even that we don't, that they too would experience that wonder that we appreciate and would also have that opportunity to say, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. God bless you, church. Pray that God is continuing to enthuse you and uplift you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.